My name's Paul, welcome to Paul Perambulates. In this episode, I'm on the south coast of England, on the Isle of Purbeck, exploring the area south of the Purbeck Hills and around Corfe Castle. My start point is the Kimmeridge Quarry car park, postcode BH205PE, grid reference SY 91868002. What three words? Perfume, deriving, talent. I set off southeastwards along the Hardy Way path, high up, overlooking the coast, enjoying great sea views as far as Swire Head. Not much further along, I head inland to the village of Kingston with its beautiful church. Then I turn northward, heading over Corfe Common to Corfe Castle village and the castle itself. I turn westward, climbing up onto the Purbeck Hills for great views of the castle. Then continue along the ridge of the hills, enjoying great views as far as Stonehill Down Nature Reserve. Finally, I head cross-country southwards back to Kimmeridge. Total distance 14.3 kilometres. Total height gain 424 metres. Total walking time 4 hours and 25 minutes. The quarry car park just above Kimmeridge. Got about 30 spaces at a push. No gates, free. It's a Friday during the school holidays and the weather forecast is absolutely brilliant, and yet not particularly full. There's some good shade here as well for the summer. We can see here where the rock was quarried away. It's Purbeck limestone, reputedly relatively easy to work, but also very durable, and we will be seeing a lot of buildings consisting of it as we go around the route. Already on the way out of the car park, this view over towards Portland Bill. But they get better than this. There is a monster climb straight out of the car park, as you can tell by my breathing. But that'll obviously be worth it because it will make the views better. As the Hardy Way climbs Smedmore Hill, it traces the edge of a steep escarpment overlooking a narrow coastal plain, and that offers us this kind of spectacular sea view. This is Clavell Tower, built in 1830 by the Reverend John Richards Clavell as an observatory and folly. It's now owned by the Landmark Trust, who financed the preservation of interesting historical buildings like this by renovating the interiors as holiday lets. In August 2006, they saved the whole building from collapsing into the sea due to coastal erosion by dismantling it, labelling each brick and rebuilding it 25 metres inland. Looking the other way, we can see all along the Purbeck Hills. In the background there, Poole Harbour, Corfe Castle in the foreground, more of that later. And then right along the range that we'll be walking later. From here, Corfe Castle is away in the distance. Shortly, we'll be turning and heading directly towards it. A little further along Smedmore Hill, A seat with a view to absolutely die for. If it was a little bit later in the day, I would almost certainly be sitting there and eating my lunch. The gate right next to it on the Hardy Way path is rather appropriately called Heaven's Gate. I'm approaching the trig point on Swire Head now, 203 metres. Swire Head is the highest point on the whole route and the highest point in the Purbecks. But that trig point isn't itself the top. That is this mound up ahead, which is a tumulus burial mound, and that's 208 metres. Climbing up onto the mound, we find this concrete platform. Couldn't find anything online about this, but it absolutely has to be a Second World War observation point at least, if not a gun emplacement. We're on the south coast looking out over the English Channel. It's the highest point around here. It's the obvious place to put one. And just down towards the head itself there's another seat with a similarly glorious view looking out over the Channel down towards Portland and the Dorset Coast. Away at the southeastern corner of the Isle of Purbeck you can see St Aldhelm's Head. Imagine living there. Tucked away far below the path, Encombe House. Looks like some kind of Gothic mansion. Difficult to tell. It's in a very secluded spot. One of the great things about the Isle of Purbeck as a whole is its unspoiled rural beauty. The Dorset Coast doesn't have a huge number of accessible beaches, and the inlets aren't really safe for ships, so it doesn't attract ports and industry. It's therefore remained agricultural, and as such is unspoilt. Certainly on a Friday during the school holidays, on a location on the south coast in beautiful weather, you'd expect it to be heaving. I've seen a few people, but really not very many. And that's one of the great advantages of Purbeck. It's a little bit of a secret. Heading away from the coast now and inland, but certainly not the end of the excellent views. Should you wish to shorten or change the route, there's a car park here, the Sheep Pens car park, kindly provided by the Encombe estate. Corfe Castle coming much closer now as we head inland towards it. Patch of rather lovely shade as we come towards the village of Kingston. As you might expect here, lots of the Purbeck limestone that I mentioned in the quarry. Perhaps the best example is this, St James's Church, built by the local landowner, Lord Eldon, modelled on a classic English cathedral in miniature. It was originally built as the private chapel of Lord Eldon and only became Kingston's village church in 1921, taking the place of a 12th century chapel on the eastern side of the village, which unfortunately I won't have time to go and visit today. As we emerge from the woods by Kingston, the way ahead is clear. Now this has caught my eye. Pretty much every field I've ever been in had a gate. I've never ever seen one with a door. It's private property, so unfortunately I can't go through it. But it made me chuckle. I've now arrived at the largest piece of access land on the route, and I'm expecting some particularly excellent views from here. And this is what I'm expecting some pretty good views of. When you consider that the Old English word Ciorfan means cutting or gap, you can see how Corfe got its name. Corfe Castle was built in the 11th century by William the Conqueror. There's evidence of a settlement and fortress here before then. The Saxon king Edward the Martyr was apparently murdered here in 978. It was one of the earliest castles in England to be built using stone, Purbeck stone of course. King John, he of the Magna Carta, treated Corfe Castle as home, kept the crown jewels here, stayed here a lot, spent a lot of money on building it and making it more luxurious. The castle came out of royal hands in the 1570s when Elizabeth I sold it to one of her courtiers. By the time of the English Civil War, it had passed to the Banks family. They were supporters of the royalist cause, and the castle was besieged twice during the Civil War, the first time unsuccessfully. The owner, Sir John Banks, who had bought it in 1635, was away fighting for the king. And it was actually his wife and her daughters and their maids who led the resistance to the parliamentarian siege, successfully in 1643, and only in 1645 was the castle taken. I'm heading into the village, which is also called Corfe Castle now. A lot of the buildings in which will be built exclusively of Purbeck limestone, many of the blocks of which will have come from the castle. Places don't come much more British than this. Thatched cottage on the right, beautiful limestone ones everywhere else. Church with a Union Jack flying. Can't see the castle from here, which is a shame. That would really complete the picture. Now coming up to the Church of St Edward, the second most impressive limestone construction in the village. This is the village square. The monument in the centre is for Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee in 1897. Heading up now to the entrance to the castle. I'm not going to go in as I don't have the time, and we're going to get a much better view of it later anyway, as we'll see. This is the closest I'm going to get, and we can certainly see in detail the damage caused during, but mainly after, the siege in 1645. Skirting around the castle now and can see some of the destruction that was wrought on it. Great sections of masonry came tumbling down the hill. What a sight that must have been. And then they've lain here, undisturbed, for 380 years. Heading up now onto the Purbecks. An unexpected geological attraction on the way up. The West Hill chalk pit. Taking me up onto the Purbeck Hills is a rather excellent stone staircase. Bit of a climb, but not difficult walking. Up on the main Purbeck Hills range now. Brilliant views. Great spot for a coffee. Cheers. I think this must be the best non-aerial view you can get of Corfe Castle, across from it and slightly above it. The eventual fall of the castle in 1645 involved some treachery. One of the officers volunteered to go and get reinforcements. When on the outside, he turned himself over to the parliamentarians, and the supposed reinforcements he came back with were in fact parliamentarian troops in disguise. Lady Mary Banks was spared, and in recognition of her bravery was given the keys to the castle in a rare moment of reconciliation. The castle itself, by order of a parliament held at nearby Wareham, was slighted. Castles are built to resist demolition. It wasn't worth knocking the whole thing down, so it was damaged enough to prevent it from ever being used as a military fortress again. And that explains the state in which we see it today. Away to the northeast, we can see Poole Harbour, but I think we're going to get a better view of that as we go along the range. Coming along the top of the Purbeck Hills, we see the Knoll Hill trig point. Only 120 metres, far from the highest one I've ever seen. What we do get from here though is a breathtaking view of Poole Harbour. Poole and Bournemouth in the background. Coming right round, we can see the Isle of Wight in the distance, and then the Purbeck Range. There, in the middle of it, is Brownsea Island, which, as a scout leader, obviously has some significance for me. Looking the other way, down from the ridge, just lots and lots of beautiful green Purbeck countryside. Nice easy walking along the ridge. Classical rolling English hills. A little bit parched at the moment. It's a very hot day today, at the end of a very hot summer, which came after a very dry spring. Still beautiful. An interesting milestone here with a memorial on top of it. The dedication is to Mary Baxter, who must have been one of those absolute heroes up and down the country who keep all the paths open for us to walk. This is Stonehill Down Nature Reserve, cut into the chalk of the Purbecks, home to a profusion of rare wildflowers and butterflies, including the Lulworth skipper, which, as the name suggests, is extremely localised to this part of Dorset. This is the highest remaining point of the walk, looking beyond Stonehill Down, out over Dorset. Fantastic view of Poole Harbour. And then looking back along the Purbeck Hills range where I've come, the Isle of Wight in the distance, and coming round to the green Purbeck countryside. The Isle of Wight, hazy in the distance. As you pull back out, the very top of Corfe Castle comes into shot as well. Brownsea Island, the birthplace of scouting. In the other direction, Clavell Tower, which we saw at the very start of the walk. So that's the direction I need to go in to finish it off. Finding my way back across to Kimmeridge now. Little bit of nav through some little wooded lanes, so you need to keep your wits about you for this bit, but it's not too bad. At least it provides a nice bit of shade on what has been a very hot day. This is a particularly interesting part of getting back across to where the car is. It goes diagonally across this field, which is always planted with some crop or other. I've been through here when it was wheat. This, I don't know what it is, I don't recognise it, but it's the back end of summer now, so it's nearly fully grown, I'm guessing, and standing extremely tall. But the path is clearly visible through it, so in a funny way, even though you can't see anything at all, it's actually quite easy to follow. I've just emerged from it, and that's what it looks like from the outside. The next field on is a little bit of a treat. It's obviously been let to wild meadow. Loads of beautiful wildflowers, lots of bees around pollinating. Again, the path is clearly visible, nice and easy to follow. And then back to something more conventional. A grazed cattle field with no cattle in it. As I head back in towards the car park, I'm looking up at the initial climb I did first thing this morning. I'm quite glad I don't have to do that again. Nice view behind me, Clavell Tower that side, Portland Bill way off behind me in the distance that side. I'll come on to the views in a minute. Difficulty wise, I'm giving that a 4, and even then only because the distance was just over 10 miles. Obviously you could shorten that if you wanted to. Navigation, not difficult. You have 2 parallel ridges and basically just have to walk along the top of one, cross to the other, walk back along the top of that one and cross again. Underfoot, not really difficult anywhere. I guess that depends on what time of year you come. I'm here in high summer, so it's all very firm underfoot. But coming back to the views, they are absolutely sumptuous. The fact that you're on a ridge for most of the walk means that you get fantastic and changing views. I've tried to capture as many as I can in this video, but I would strongly recommend that you come along and have a look at them in real life. All maps and 3D fly-throughs provided by kind permission of Ordnance Survey through their excellent OS Online application. Big thanks also for all music used in this video to mixkit.co and upbeat.io. Specific song and artist credits can be found in the comments. These videos are designed to show you around the routes I walk in case you're considering doing them yourself. They are not designed to be any kind of hill walking training or guidance. If you need hill walking skills, obtain them in person from a reputable, qualified provider. Please don't attempt these walks without appropriate levels of fitness and equipment. If you don't have the required levels of knowledge and experience, only undertake them accompanied by somebody who does. You can find out more about me and my background and experience at my website paulperambulates.co.uk. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Paul Perambulates. If you did, please subscribe and share.